Amanita muscaria mushrooms are often by mushrooms like psilocybin.
Yes.
And those substances are, to call them strange, is barely to scrape the surface.
Have you taken psychedelics?
Yes, I have.
And yes, it sounds like it because exactly. Yes, you're right. It's the strangest of things, and when it comes to identity and the psychedelics' effect on human identity, it does create an experience that is transcendent to the very temporary human form that we're currently within. And
yes, well, there's a psychiatrist named Rick Strassman who was at the University of Texas, and he had been giving his experimental subjects. He's one of two groups that had got permission to start experimenting with psychedelics again. The other one was a group at Johns Hopkins who've been reporting the consequences of giving experimental subjects psilocybin in its chemical form. They've reported permanent personality transformations on the part of the people who took the psilocybin mushrooms who had a mystical experience. And so what's happened to them, apart from the fact that they regarded the experience as one of the top 2 or 3 experiences of their life in terms of transformation, is that when you give them personality tests a year later, these are 5-factor personality tests, and they test extroversion, neuroticism, agreeableness, conscientiousness, and openness. And openness is a creativity dimension, an aesthetic experience creativity dimension. And their scores on openness increase substantially, approximately the equivalent of from the 50th percentile to the 85th percentile, which is 1 standard deviation. They increase and stay that way up to 1 year later. So wow. These chemicals, these strange chemicals, produce very long-lasting effects on people's perception, and they do produce intimations of mystical experience. Now, Strassman actually got scared away from his DMT research. He was a pretty, I would say, conservative scientist and was administering DMT intravenously because it has a very short half-life. If you take it any other way, it only lasts about 10 minutes.
Right.
And his people, who were very carefully screened to begin with for sanity and so forth, although they had some experience with psychedelic drugs because they didn't want to introduce naive people to anything like that.
Right.
They all reported being shot out of their body and encountering alien beings.
Yes.
All of them. And they, when Strassman attempted to explain that away as let's call it a hallucination, although technically, if you're hallucinating, you know that you're hallucinating and you know what's real. So these were far deeper than hallucinations.
Right.
Or that they were something like Jungian archetypes, but his subjects insisted that, including people who knew quite a bit about archetypal psychology, insisted that was not correct, that they were in fact shot out of their bodies into other spaces and dimensions, and that they encountered beings of all sorts of different types, some of whom were surprised to see them, some of whom were happy they were there, some of whom engaged them in conversation. It makes very strange reading.
Yes.
There's no straightforward way of making sense of it. And there's no straightforward way of making sense of the shamanic experiences too. Eliade thought that those rituals had been, if they were induced by drugs, that was a corrupt form of the original ritual. But I think later scholarship has indicated that that's profoundly wrong, and that the basis of these experiences is in fact hallucinogenic experience of the sort, say, that the Aztecs induced with psilocybin mushrooms or mescaline.